Joel, talk to us about the quarter. It's presumably been a difficult one for everybody involved in REITs, but you're better positioned than anybody given what you specialise in, at least the life sciences part. Have you had difficulties with some of your campuses?
Well, indeed. Thanks, Vonnie, for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here. And hopefully everybody is taking care and being safe. We just finished the third quarter report. We released earnings on Monday and did our conference call yesterday. And we're pleased to report really the largest transaction volume in the company's history during a COVID quarter. It's kind of hard to believe. We made a large number of acquisitions, many of which that had the capability to add value. We today operate well in excess of 30 million square feet of laboratory space. And it's important to remember, since the early days of COVID in the United States in mid-March, when kind of the early shutdowns came, our properties are deemed really essential. They operate 24/7. Our frontline workers have been there since day one, helping continue to operate, because you can't do science from home. And laboratories are inherently actually quite safe. They have great air volume. They have many changes per hour of 100% fresh air. There's natural spacing. And so it actually is a relatively safe environment. The challenge is oftentimes getting to and from our laboratories through public transportation in a COVID environment. But we've had a great few months and a great couple of quarters in what would otherwise be a pretty miserable environment for really all of the United States with COVID-19. And it's important to note that almost 100 of our tenants who are normally doing great research and development are actually doing work in the COVID area, whether it be testing and diagnostics, the important area of vaccines as well, and then therapeutics. In fact, this morning, I did an interview for Robinhood with Scott Gottlieb, who focused heavily on the environment today and going forward and vaccines. Mike Polini, who's one of the world's experts on testing and diagnostics, and Dave Ricks, CEO of Lilly, on really the therapeutic opportunities. So it was a great discussion, and our tenants are hard at work doing really amazing things. And I think we get through the next few months, maybe the next 2 or 3 months, I think we'll see definite light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, and certainly around the research corridor, the research triangle, Cambridge, Massachusetts, close to Harvard, New York City, and so on, I'm sure you generally see low turnover. But are companies trying to renegotiate payments or lease lengths? Are they giving any thought, are you giving any thought to what might become of the campus where all young people wanted to go and work?
Well, the nice part about what we do, again, lab space, our lab space, we created this niche back in 1994, and today it's become really a mainstream real estate sector. These are essential properties doing great research and development. They operate 24/7. They're not closed. And in the third quarter, we collected 99.7% of our rents. And in October, we also reported collecting 99.7% of our rents, probably the top, if not the number one. Maybe there's another REIT or two that did better in maybe the data world or in logistics, but collecting 99.7% of your cash rents is pretty historically great. And the part that we didn't connect are mostly small food operators who you could expect would be, struggling given the inability to, to open and provide food service. And we're certainly working with those folks. So it was really a historic collection quarter.
Yeah, indeed. Well, what about your other types of properties? Because you also, for example, are in a partnership with Uber to provide a huge amount of space for Uber in San Francisco, and also the likes of Pinterest and some other tech companies. What are they seeing in terms of people coming back into the offices or downsizing headquarter space?
Yeah, so we only have about 10 plus minus percent of our space is really traditional office, and most of our clients are the mega tech companies, including Facebook, Google, Amazon, and then you mentioned Facebook, Uber, Pinterest. Stripe, Pinterest, and Uber. Many of the tech companies have gone to a work from home and a virtual situation. As you know, many have announced plans to really defer workers coming back until sometime in 2021. And even a number of companies have said maybe we'll do a somewhat virtual situation. I think we're not primarily an office company. We're primarily a laboratory company. But for the office, certainly those companies pay us rent and we don't have any issues. But many of them will operate virtually for the foreseeable future. And many of them will look for maybe a more decentralized focus of being outside the big cities and maybe in secondary cities.
Yeah.
That certainly are maybe a little more attractive cost-wise and so forth.
Now,
but I think it's when you have major campuses, Apple's, Google's, they aren't going to go anywhere. They're going to stay in their campuses and they're going to operate as they do. And the big cities are the place they can really recruit people. And I think they'll find out a way to. It's hard to create culture when you work, from your bedroom or your kitchen table. So that's an issue people have to come to grips with.
Well, so that's definitely been the mantra, Joel. But if you give us the benefit of your wisdom beyond ARE, right? So everyone you've been talking to and so on, is the consensus that the urban centre will still be the place where millennials, Gen Zers, and so on will want to go eventually, or have the suburbs now taken over?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I think over the last number of years, we've certainly focused on ecosystems around our campus, and we've chosen the major life science clusters to do that. But tech is different. Tech is, they generally don't want to work in the same building. They generally don't want to work adjacent to each other, different companies. And the reason is because those workers, generally, everybody's trying to steal everybody else's, engineers and so forth. So the life science industry has historically clustered and been in tight ecosystems. Tech has actually been different. So it's natural for them to be able to say to somebody, okay, you can move out of San Francisco, go to Boise, go to, Reno, go to Phoenix or Salt Lake or Denver or some other cities, and we'll pay you less money. We'll pay you some money to do that. And, we can build a kind of a hub and spoke kind of situation. So I think it's natural for tech. That's very unnatural for the life science industry. Speaking
of those cities, you mentioned Reno, but I'm curious as to what you think will happen to the likes of Las Vegas. We're hearing that Sheldon Adelson is potentially going to move out. Do you think that those areas have a future, Joel?
Well, I think when you talk about different locations, I think you also have to put them against two items in choosing whether it's states or cities. One is, do you have a governance regime that provides kind of safety and cleanliness in those locations? And that's becoming paramount as we've seen over the last several months of civil strife and increasing homelessness. And then I think second is the tax regimes in different cities and states. And I think San Francisco has a gross receipts tax. So that's going to deter companies from staying there and paying a tax that they may, if they go to a city on the peninsula, that they don't have to pay, or they go over to Reno, they don't have to pay. And then state taxes, California is rumored to be looking at a number of different tax increases. And what happens when you raise taxes, people think that's really a great thing because it provides you, whether it's the city or the state or even the national government, with greater resources. But what they don't see is what it does is causes flight of capital and flight of talented people, the human capital. And I think that's what will happen more and more to high-tech states like California, New Jersey, New York. You'll find people moving to the Nevadas, the Texases, and states that have,
Yes.
Tennessee, that have much more minimum tax regimes.